Drazah is a Call of Duty champion and on one of the best teams in the Call of Duty League right now. His story is unique from many other pros, and he has made many sacrifices to achieve success at the pro level today, but his rise to the top of the game hasn't been without his fair share of controversy and rivalries, making him a polarizing figure in esports. This is a story of Drazah's inspiring and controversial rise in Call of Duty esports.
Yeah.
Hey, excuse me, we got a call of an assassin here from Alaska. Need to take care of it.
Drazah is originally from the cold state of Alaska and one of the only pro players in Call of Duty from this state. He started playing video games because of his siblings early on and got really good at games. It wouldn't be until Black Ops 3 in 2016 when he started playing Call of Duty competitively. He started playing his first $1 wager, and then from there the wagers became more and more. He started making waves in the online search and destroy scene from winning wagers and competing in tournaments to get his name out there, but was unable to compete at the pro level until he turned 18 years later. Now, playing on Alaska servers was obviously difficult, especially when he started playing better competition. Eventually it became too difficult, and he knew in order to take his game to the next level he would have to move to the lower 48. By Black Ops 4, Drazah built a strong connection with his duo Optimum, an aspiring pro player himself, and after some long conversations and convincing, Optimum's mom allowed Drazah to move in with them in Seattle, Washington, just so that he could load into a server with good ping. This move was definitely nerve-wracking, but this is what Drazah wanted to do as a career, and he knew he would have to take some risks. So he saved up some money and shipped his PC and himself to Seattle and began his journey in Challengers shortly after. Drazah spent the beginning of Modern Warfare in the Challengers League, rubbing shoulders with some well-known people in the scene. He played with Proloot, Tiny, Parasite, Paul X, and many more. As the season progressed, Drazah became more known in the competitive COD scene, and people started noticing how talented and hungry he was to be the best player possible. He progressed quickly and joined an even better Challengers team known as UYU, and people like Mud Dog started noticing him and wanted to give him a shot at a pro level. After some underwhelming placements throughout the MW season, OGLA decided it was time to bring in some new faces to change up the team dynamics, so Drazah and Hollow joined OGLA in place of Dashy and Chino, drawing some criticism from the community, and CDL fans were watching closely to see if they could bring some new life into the team, and he made his official debut as a pro Call of Duty player on July 17th, 2020, and instantly made an impact, showcasing his talent and gun skill in his first few minutes in the league.
This reminds a hard point, and you love what you're seeing so far. And again, we're giving the newcomers a bit of love here as Drazah finds kill number 3 in a row.
Very nice job to at least flip those spawns, trying to set up for that new rotation, but it's Drazah, the lone man, the new guy, was the only one trying to fight for the new guns. He's able to pick up that kill on Havoc, buying his team a little bit more time.
It's right underneath him. That is very, very unfortunate. Now the presence is on hardpoint. Quick reposition. Tags are there. Finds one. His teammates get the second. Florida Mutineers starting to dip and out. They're getting dropped left, right, and center. Drazah, what was that? What was that kill? How did that happen?
Unfortunately, they did not win this game, losing a Game 5, Round 11, but Drazah proved that he could hang with the pros. The rest of the season was solid for Drazah, and he used this opportunity to learn the game at the pro level, preparing him for his exciting future in the COD League. Despite only being in the league for less than 2 months, Drazah found himself in the biggest tournament of the year, 2020 COD Champs, except due to COVID, this event was hosted online. Dashy was still on the roster, and after Kenny was having some connection issues, Dashy subbed in for him in the Search and Destroy, where he had this infamous 3-piece to close out the game and win their first round in COD Champs. OGLA would go on to 3-0 both Minnesota Rocker and Florida Mutineers before a heartbreaking Game 5 loss against Chicago Huntsmen. In Drazah's first ever Champs appearance, he placed top 6, winning $300,000, only a preview of what would come later in his career. His stats weren't outstanding this season, but this was a good time for him to get familiar with the pro scene. But going into the Cold War season, Drazah found himself back in Challengers. Despite having a decent placing at Champs, in COD League fashion, he went back to Challengers. LAT had bought OGLA at this point, and he was on the LA Thieves roster, but he was a substitute, being on the bench for the majority of the season. But this was good. It was a foundational time for Drazah to build his confidence and game sense grinding at the amateur level. He joined forces again with his duo Optimum, Prolu, and Dave Patty, and at the beginning of the year, he was just being a sponge to all the information, putting himself in the best position for success in the future. Slasher, and Drazah had a slow start to begin the year, but then switched to an AR midway through the season. He upgraded the players he played with, and in March 2021, he won a Challengers Open event alongside Insight, Decimate, and Twerk. What a name. Despite winning this tournament, his Challengers team wanted to drop him for Venom, which they eventually did, and this was perfect because at this time, LA Thieves decided to take a chance on Drazah, and he was initially brought in for Slasher. They started playing well together, but after dropping TJ Halley for Hoop, LA Thieves' performance saw a major decline. Many roster changes happened, and Drazah was put back onto the bench, but joined the roster again for Major 4 after Hook misspelled his name on a COVID test. They placed top 12. This was a big turning point for Drazah because they decided to keep him on the roster for the rest of the season. And it's kind of crazy to think that a spelling error helped Drazah secure a roster spot on LAT, but by the time COD Champs came around, Thieves had an underwhelming performance, placing top 8. However, Drazah had cemented his spot on the roster for the time being, leading to his biggest season yet. Going into the Vanguard season, Kenny and Drazah were locked into the roster and were just looking for 2 more players to upgrade their team. LA Thieves believed these 2 would become a championship caliber roster, and they found 2 other veterans in Envoy and Octane. This roster on paper was bound to be a dangerous team, but the beginning of the season was quite the opposite story. It got so bad that Drazah thought he might even be dropped from the roster around Major 2 qualifiers when they went 0-5 in the online split, placing top 8 at Major 2. At this point, LA Thieves had the idea to switch Drazah and Kenny's roles, with Drazah becoming an AR once again, and that's when everything truly changed. Following this change, LA Thieves emerged with a renewed energy, sticking with the same roster and achieving a 2nd place finish at the Pro-Am Classic, improving their placements as the year went on. Drazah was growing more comfortable by the day. Thieves were starting to see success. At Major 3, they achieved a better placement, finishing in the top 4, and they began to find their groove. Things really took a turn at Major 4 in Brooklyn, an event that I was blessed to attend myself. It's crazy because I actually had the chance to meet Drazah at this event, and I'm not even saying this because I'm making a video on him, but he was genuinely one of the coolest pros that I met all weekend. We took this picture and flexed a little bit, and he was just a really nice dude. Despite being doubted all year and people asked him for different players on LA Thieves to be dropped, they made a crazy bracket run at this tournament, carrying that momentum into the biggest tournament of the year. Now going into COD Champs, the Thieves were in their best form all season. All the extra work Drazah and the guys had put in eventually paid off, and they knocked out Boston Breach.
They begin to collapse! They begin to collapse as that will be 3! Vivid, now in a 1v4, it all comes down to him. Bomb planted, and he...
Optic Texas.
Ticking away, 2 lives left for Optic. Dachi fighting tooth and nail, kills are there. Scum, it all comes down to you!
And their next match was against FaZe, who had been talking smack to Thieves throughout the season when they were down. And for Drazah, this matchup was personal. In the winners finals, LA Thieves came out with a dominant 3-1 finish, including a 100-point club in the final map.
Going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1!
They were a matchup in the grand finals once again, and it was a similar story to the previous series. LA Thieves took over in the grand finals, winning 5-2 versus FaZe, and Drazah had to let him hear it.
Run this guy.
He's on the truck still.
Abe dead.
Nice,
Nice.
truck dead. Truck dead.
Last was C5.
He's out of max.
Even after the event, the rivalry with FaZe continued. As FaZe said, it's also pretty weird how Snaking got patched and still destroyed you and Drazah and everyone in the league last year. Drazah saying thanks for the ring, Simp responding saying act like you've been here before, you clown. Clearly there was a rivalry brewing between LA Thieves and FaZe, but Drazah got the best of them. And after only 2 years in the Pro League, Drazah reached the peak of competitive COD, winning the biggest tournament of the year and becoming a world champion. He showed his competitive nature and not being afraid to back down from anyone, even a world champ like Simp. Drazah was insane in S&D this tournament, dropping a 1.43 and helping lead his team to their first ring in CDL history. Now going into Modern Warfare 2, this was Drazah's final year on LA Thieves. Thieves were in the middle of the pack, placing top 6 at Major 1, but then bounced back in Major 2, showing their potential in this new title, placing 2nd, losing the S&Ds and controls, getting Neslo'd in the grand finals, and then Major 3 was a heartbreaker for Drazah as they were on the other side of the most most incredible comeback in hardpoint history by Clayster and Vegas Legion. The entire Major 4 stretch was the best for them all season. They placed second in Major 4 qualifiers, regaining some confidence from the previous disappointments. Major 4 was cancelled, so no fans could attend. They made an incredible winners bracket run, knocking out Rocker, FaZe, and Optic twice in the process. Of course, the event with no fans was the one that Drazah and LA Thieves came out victorious in, winning their first event since Vanguard champs in 2022, showing that they still could perform at a championship caliber. Unfortunately, they couldn't replicate this success for the rest of the season, with a top 6 finish at Major 5, and man, I missed when COD had 5 majors per year. They had a disappointing top 8 finish at champs, getting double first rounded by Ultra and Surge, and this marked the end of Drazah's time on LA Thieves, with Octane retiring shortly after, and the team deciding to go their separate ways. Drazah was offered a spot on Optic Texas, but he turned it down because, in his own words, he wanted to beat them all season, and that's exactly what he did. Envoy joined Toronto Ultra, and Kenny eventually filled that Optic roster spot, making for some interesting storylines going into Modern Warfare 3. Drazah was always keen to trash talk his opponents, but this season was when his villain arc really started, especially in the eyes of the CDL community. The pressure was on Drazah to perform as FaZe brought him in for Slasher to be the difference maker, and he was up for the challenge. Instantly, Atlanta FaZe rose to the top of the standings with a 7-0 record, along with a 21-5 map count, nearly being untouchable to start the year. They would make a solid bracket run at Major 1 before losing twice to Toronto Ultra in the winners finals and grand finals. Things would start to get spicy during Major 2 qualifiers, and one of the biggest beefs we've seen in the CDL. Now, I'm not going to dive too much in it because I actually have a video that goes more in depth. I'll leave it linked in the description. But after beating Toronto in an online qualifier, Drazah let Toronto know that he didn't think they were good at all despite winning Major 1.
Top, who do you think competes for the title come Miami in 2 weeks?
Honestly, it's just us in Toronto, but as you've seen, we just 3-0'd them, so I think they're and
Then Scrap took offense to this statement. This resulted in a nasty back and forth between Scrap and Drazah, along with their girlfriends getting involved in the feud. And all this trash talk that turned personal sparked an intense rivalry throughout the rest of the season to the present day. Drazah called him out after winning Major 2 against Optic Texas, and this would not be the only rivalry brewing for Drazah, because during Major 3 qualifiers, he called out Optic after beating them 9 times in a row and 6 times in the MW3 season alone.
just the CEO of that org. I haven't lost them in years, so I just think it's me. Like, I don't know. I think it's kind of all of us. We're just making our plays when it gets really hectic, and normally we just make better plays than everyone else in the league. So that's it.
Self-proclaiming himself to be the CEO of Optic, even changing his Twitter bio to it at one point. Now, Drazah was rising to become one of the best players in the game and helped bring energy to the FaZe roster, sometimes for better and other times for worse, but mostly for the better because every placing they had was like top 3 or better. During Major 3, Drazah and Scrap's rivalry continued, and Drazah let Scrap know how he really felt. Unfortunately, this would come back to bite him as they would lose their next 2 rounds, and to make things even worse, Optic beat FaZe for the first time all season in the losers finals. Despite a disappointing finish, FaZe were still a top 2 team in the game with consistent placements all season, and Drazah was still improving his game, learning as much as he could, and he's only been in the league for a couple years at this point, so we're only seeing the beginning of his career. But they would place second against NYSL at Major 4 and had 2 tournaments left. COD Champs was underwhelming for FaZe though, and they became the villains of the CDL during this season. You either loved them or you hated them, but it created for some really interesting storylines this season. FaZe beat Miami in the first round at COD Champs, then lost to NYSL in a heartbreaking Game 5. Finally, Toronto and FaZe met up in the losers bracket for a chance to advance, and the Scrap and Drazah rivalry finally came to a head. Toronto 3-0ing FaZe and Scrap getting the best of him in this one, and this would be the last time they played this season, but Drazah would see one of his rivals again at the Esports World Cup, Optic Gaming. The Esports World Cup is a new addition to the competitive calendar and featured a massive $600,000 first place prize. FaZe were extremely dominant in this tournament and bounced back from COD Champs, matching up against Optic in the single elimination bracket, completely taken over. After a convincing 3-1 over Optic, Drazah had this to say.
Rushed backstage and be placed into the graveyard in the podium.
I mean, I'm the CEO of this org, obviously, so I already knew I was going to get it.
And so the saga continued. FaZe beat 100 Thieves in the grand finals, who made an impressive bracket run themselves, and Drazah earned his biggest paycheck of the season with a win in Saudi Arabia.
They go, and it's Simp, Cell, Drazah, the whole squad, FaZe! They've done it!
FaZe stuck with the same roster after a historically successful season and looked to continue their dominance in the newest Call of Duty title. At the Esports World Cup, Drazah had a complete turnaround with a 1.12 KD and a 1.68 in S&D. He was absolutely frying in the final tournament of the year and was looking to continue that in Black Ops 6. At the beginning of this season in Black Ops 6, FaZe had everyone fooled thinking they completely fell off. They were on a little losing streak to start the season, but have slowly crept back into contention going into January 2025. Now the turning point for them was the first ever minor tournament in CDL history, as they made a dominant bracket run, beating Scrap and LA Thieves. They even found more success overseas in Madrid, winning the season's first major tournament, and now find themselves at the top of the league once again. Now Drazah had a slow start to this season, but since then he's turned it around, especially in his recent matchup against Optic, where he had an absolute masterclass.
Nearly in a medium break if you're Optic Texas. Okay, well that's what you need. 3 down, here comes a flood forward. On to Drazah to make the play, and Drazah is making the play. Triple for Drazah. That will ice the game. There's one player remaining at Kenny. Drazah says, why the hell not? The CEO comes to battle and dominates late.
Claiming the title of CEO once again, and it's deserved after a performance like that. At the end of the day, he's a competitor and has the ability to back up the things that he says. He's not afraid to speak his mind, and he's created some of the most interesting storylines in the past couple years. He continues to write his own history as a professional Call of Duty player, and his story is far from over. So from Alaska to a world champion, Drazah's journey in Call of Duty esports has been anything but ordinary. He battled ping, climbed the ranks through sheer determination and risk-taking, ultimately reaching the pinnacle of the game. But his story isn't just about championships, it's about rivalries, trash talk, and a polarizing personality that ignites passion in the COD community. His story also shows that how putting in extra work to be the best at your craft truly pays off, and it inspires me and anyone else who wants to achieve their goals. No matter what you think of him, Drazah has undoubtedly left his mark on the Call of Duty scene, and his story is still being written. So I can't wait to see how the rest of his career plays out, and it's best of luck to him going forward. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video, you gotta check out my recent video where I talk about the biggest rivalries in Call of Duty history. It'll be the first link in the description. But with that said, I hope you guys have a great day or night whenever you're watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, peace.